I'd like to thank everyone for their patience, and I'd like to acknowledge the members of media. As you know, that we're actually now broadcasting live on Facebook and on Zoom. So we have some members of media and actually some chambers of commerce also online. And this is the new norm. There are actually also restrictions because of COVID protocols as to how many people can be present in a conference room. It's only like a 50% capacity. So we do apologize for those who are not able to be with us physically right now. But we pray and look forward that you also enjoy this learning this morning. At this juncture, to formally welcome us and to give a rationale of why we are having this event, I'd like to call on Mr. John Ramos, founder and CEO of Premier Family Business Consulting.
Okay, good morning. So I need to adjust my microphone. Good morning indeed. I didn't really expect that this is how it's going to be this formal, but I feel like I'm so blessed. We are also blessed that we are, despite the restrictions done by COVID, we're all gathered here together to be able to collaborate and explore many possibilities of how we can help lead our nation to recover from the crisis we're actually currently in. As you know, families in business is everybody's business. Do you agree? Yes. And leading the way to national recovery is not simple, but it's really very purposeful. And it has been a winding road for each one of us, be it as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, or as a professional working for a family business. And it was really a roller coaster ride into our economy, and being battled with so much of intricacy, so much of volatility, and political noises. But we are here nonetheless to be able to drive into it, and the result is we're becoming more resilient than before. Most businesses survived. These are businesses owned and managed by families. They are caught with so much of fears and uncertainties coming from not being able to control the situations, their customers, their supply chains, everything else. It would seem to look like it's difficult and the future is really vague. I remember as I was in the middle of solving the crisis of a family business, that the parents really, are so disturbed. But despite that, the acceptance level of these parents, when I met them and I heard their, fears, really rose up to the highest level. And he said, this is going to be another learning experience. To me, being resilient is not just about, accepting what is our reality, but accepting it to move forward with firm resolve that the solutions is not only carried by one person, but carried by purpose-driven and skilled individuals. Premier, who stood on the ground, helping some families in business, have also witnessed a lot of these values being used or being carried on by entrepreneurs, by their children as well, by their professionals. And these are three values that I'd like to share with you. And hopefully I can also honor these families in business for really doing so great despite the crisis. The first value is the value of commitment. Despite the crisis, they're committed to keep their mission and to be able to help not only their families, but the families that they're working with. Second is perseverance. Despite the many opportunity loss or the losses that they have experienced, they persevered. And they are changing their mindset. They shifted from being, the traditional businessman to a more socially inclined entrepreneur, hoping that with whatever learnings that will actually, whatever learnings that they have right now will create more opportunities for them or for their next generation family members. The third one is being, I mentioned about commitment, I mentioned about perseverance, but you see, another one is care. Being a consultant working with families in business, while they invest on us, but I felt like, the care is very, very warm as they, work with us. And not only in how they actually work with their consultants, but how they also embrace change in a way that they don't necessarily just, you know, um, I would say they don't necessarily have to make their, organization leaner in a way that uh, a lot of people will lose their jobs, but they're keeping their people. That's how they care for it. Today, Premier is setting its course to lead the way to national recovery of families in business. And as consultants, I think you will agree with me that it is no longer our survival, but it is, I think, the survival of the entire economic landscape, especially the family business systems that drive each of our core purpose onwards towards seeing a more sustainable future. I can see a lot of things that we can do together. But one of the three most aspects or essentials that I see we can be effective in working together as consultants is really agile leadership. How agile can we be in adapting change? Another one is the value and supply chain creation. You see, customers have changed the way they look at things. They've also changed the way they execute their ideas. Many have thought that online is the way to fulfill each of our needs, but think it again. Online may not necessarily be the requirement. And so, no matter how easy for an enterprise to sell their goods online, but if they don't have the capability to create value and to make use that those values being created is anchored in a particular, need and should be supported by a supply chain, the rest will actually be very, very difficult to survive. And so these are things that the third one essential is the customer centricity communication. We always believe that customer is the king, but in today's time, customer is not just the king. Customer is the all. We all at one point in time is also a customer, right? But how we think, how we execute, and how we actually invest in people is something that matters most. And we are thrilled as consultants in Premier with the support of multidisciplinary team of consultants who are actually, excited to work with us. We know that this is a growing field. We know that there are more professionals, aligning themselves in the family business field. And today, we have three of them to, help us rise up. We have three of them who will sign up not only for us to join forces with Premier to help inspire and influence family unity for generational wealth, but I see that they are here to help us lead the way for national recovery of family businesses. In closing, I always believe that building strong competencies in every organization is a must. But at this time of pivoting from the pandemic, knowing how to innovate and manage change is a must. But acquiring a strong competency level in the organization is urgent. One has to have a diverse team of experts to help sell the change and execute the change all the way to the end. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear partners, we hope that that aspiration to be partners of families in business will pave more opportunity for our family businesses to recover. And not only that, we've seen opportunities for all of us to be successful in our field, but we know that our next generation of consultants will also be excited to journey with us, to learn more how to actually help others survive and succeed. With that, I'd like to welcome you all to this very important gathering where we forge partnership with some few consultants who went out of their way to be with us this morning, because not only they are interested to help, but they're also interested to be able to create a legacy of success for them, for their family, and for our country as well. Thank you, and let's enjoy.
Thank you very much, John. It's really good. I mean, I myself be able to work with such a multidisciplinary field of experts and consultants. So with not much ado, let me introduce first our first purpose-driven and skilled individual who will be joining Premier. Mr. Hans Latta is an independent consultant and attorney who advises Philippine and U.S. clients. Hans obtained his Juris Doctor with honors from George Washington University Law School and obtained his MBA from Harvard Business School. He is currently the president of the Harvard Business School Club of the Philippines, and he has been a consultant for the Boston Consulting Group as well. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Hans Latta.
So fortunately, and thank you for that kind introduction. I never like speaking about myself, so maybe we can skip past that part. But needless to say, I have a background in the law in the U.S., where focused mostly on corporate law, private equity, mergers and acquisitions. I then joined my family business, which is a trucking, warehousing, and logistics business based in the U.S. Northeast, where I went from pretty much doing deals in the context of a law firm to working the docks, driving forklifts, loading, unloading freight, learning how to drive the big trucks. These are the combination vehicles, the 48-footers and 53-foot trailers with a power unit, single axle, twin axle. It's a lot of fun, but it's also very interesting being way up in the crow's nest of a truck as you're going down the road with about 40,000 pounds of chemicals. So from there, I transitioned into various management roles within the business. But ultimately, as part of my own journey, I decided that I was looking for more out of life. It was around this time that I met my now wife, who is from the Philippines. I'll just skip right ahead to that one. I think that could be read a little bit better. But yes, and after a few years of traveling to the Philippines for holidays, we just said to ourselves, why would we live in the U.S.? Why not come home? And so after it was around this time that I decided to leave my family business as an employee. I got my MBA, but the whole time I was thinking to expand internationally. And so after MBA, I exited the family business as an owner as well. We moved to the Philippines, where my wife continued in her family business, which is Shell gas station franchises in Tarlac, which is their home province. But then she more recently opened up Shell's franchises of her own in Bernabe and Cavite. So yeah, and of course we have our little one Diego, who is about to turn 4, and we're just thrilled that he is being raised here in his home country. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I should say that as a foreigner, there's a lot to learn about the Philippines. And it's one of the reasons why I so enjoy family business advisory, because so much is new, and yet so much is also very similar. Yeah, you have to adjust for me versus Jeff. I have to bring that microphone down. So yeah, just some kind of initial observations that I've made, and these of course are things that are constantly being refined and evolving. Whereas in the U.S., when you look at structures and processes within corporate governance or how families interact, there can be a lot of informality. There can be quick decisions that are made that often aren't well documented. Whereas in the Philippines, in many instances, because of a very documented, papered society, things can be more bureaucratic and slow. There are benefits to each, and there are also constraints with each. If you look at globally, and actually Neil shared a wonderful slide just showing the prevalence of family businesses throughout the world. But I think especially in Philippines, especially in Southeast Asia, you see a much larger percentage of commerce being represented by family businesses. While these might have publicly traded shares, at the end of the day, it is a particular family or a few families that ultimately control the direction of that business. Whereas in the U.S., you still have many family-owned and family-controlled companies, some of which have been around for more than 100 years. However, increasingly you see control of these companies being shared with people outside of the family, whether those are professional investment managers or just decentralized public shareholders. And then finally, there are always different expectations. And a lot of this can come from the culture, not just the culture of the broad geographic area, but the unique, the idiosyncratic culture of the family itself. And what I've observed at least is in the US, you see much more of an individualistic culture where it's the individual being driven by what are my rights, what are my passions, what is it that I want for myself. Not a completely selfish, but it's very much kind of the starting point for many people. Whereas I think in the Philippines, the default expectation and the responsibility that comes with that is to actively engage in the family business, whether that is something that you want to or not. And it's not just an expectation that is imposed on the individual. That's an expectation that perhaps subtly or not so subtly, the family imposes on that individual and the broader society, where questions would say, your last name is such and such, you come from this family business, why are you not involved? There must be something wrong with you. And so, again, these are just differences. There's not one right way. There's not one right configuration. But it's important, certainly in the business of advising families, to understand how families are unique, not just globally, not just regionally, but one family solution would not necessarily, and in fact will not fit a solution for another family. And so in each case, a deep understanding of the family system is important, being able to assist that family in understanding where to go from there. See if I can click forward here without messing this up. Okay, so pardon, I think the formatting changed from a widescreen to a different. I'll try and navigate this a little bit, but when we look at professionalizing family businesses in the Philippines, again, these are just a few observations. These are kind of observations that evolve with time. But post-COVID, the reality is laborers are not constrained by borders anymore. And I take myself as an example. I continue to assist with US-based clients. Of course, that involves traveling to the US for in-person meetings. But I am able to connect through video conference, which is now acceptable, and advise clients from across the world. This is happening in many industries, and in fact, it is disrupting an advantage that the Philippines has enjoyed for a long time, which is the robust BPO industry. Just as an example, so with BPOs, they provide a very competitive way for Filipinos residing in the Philippines to make a very good wage. However, this is becoming more decentralized now. And so there's a diaspora 2.0 in which Filipinos in the Philippines can say, the only way for me to use my skills to get a great wage is no longer necessarily funneling through a Philippine BPO. I can go directly to someone abroad. I can be a freelancer and I can capture more of the labor arbitrage. This is going to be a big challenge for Philippine firms because they might see a dramatic change in their cost structure. Again, driven by individual freelance decisions. Second is a concept that I think is going to play out over a much longer period of time. The idea of blended cultures, where scions of family businesses who are educated abroad and then return to the Philippines, bring back other cultural and environmental influences. Whether this is a focus on ESG, on environment and social responsibility in government, or bringing back what I mentioned earlier about a focus on the individual versus collective. And in each case, this is an opportunity to enhance the family business system in the Philippines, but it's also a potential stumbling block where it can lead to conflict between perhaps a younger generation who in some ways might be eager for change quickly, and an older generation who is convinced that we've developed a way that's been very successful over a long period of time. And this is just kind of that youthful enthusiasm. So again, opportunities, but also a potential stumbling block. Professionalizing will also require looking at the current ways of doing things and finding new ways of doing them. So actually, there have been many instances where Philippine government agencies who were forced to work remotely have already adapted and incorporated new technologies, which have streamlined what used to be a very long bureaucratic process. And so this is very encouraging. And some family businesses will make those necessary changes while others might be more comfortable staying in the same way of doing things. And again, this comes down to what is your cost structure and ultimately what is the product that you're offering to customers. In a similar vein, the use of automation is increasingly being implemented by Philippines companies. An observation that I say I would have is sometimes a default in the Philippines is if there's a problem, then a way to solve it would be to add extra labor. We just need more people on the ground helping with the problem. If customers aren't being served in the right way, okay, we need more people on the ship. And this is really a Band-Aid for an inefficient process. It's hard to look at your processes. It's hard to say, what do we need to do to offer the best products at the right cost structure to our customers? Some will make the change. Some will look at their processes, they'll perfect their processes, and then they'll automate their processes. Others will not, and until one point where they wake up and say, well, our cost structure no longer makes us competitive. And then finally, and I think this more so goes to the next slide, so I'll already proceed. It's what restrictions are there on the Philippines moving forward? When we think about the key role that family businesses will play, there are some things that are within the control of the family businesses, and there are some things that are not within the control. And so we look at the the different types of restrictions that could be in place in the new normal of operating. It's wonderful, I should say, to be here in person after more than a year of various lockdowns, where we can all collaborate, we can all talk about these issues. But there's uncertainty about what individual liberties there will be had in 2021, going forward into 2022. There are uncertainties over how domestic commerce will play out. Are there certain industries that might be left behind? And if so, what steps must they take in order to emerge when they are able to, when those restrictions are lifted? And finally, it's absolutely critical to adapt to whatever restrictions there are on international travel, international commerce. As a nation of 7,000, and depending how you count it, 7,007, 14, I've heard a lot. I haven't counted them myself. There are a lot of islands here, and we need to be connected with other countries in the region, other countries of the world, and be a partner in international commerce. Another way forward, and a key role that family businesses will play, is just identifying how do we need to adapt. We are still in flux with COVID. It's undetermined what really has changed and what will revert. My feeling is people are social people, they're relationship-based people. And so while some might be hesitant to have in-person encounters, we will revert to that, as is evidenced by all of us gathering here today. But there will be changes. There will be things in which the stamp of COVID may be felt, not just for a few years, but even for a generation. It will have an impact. And understanding where those impacts are will also help family businesses look for opportunities. Necessarily, as you heard in the prior 2 points, it is uncertain what will happen. Will there be new variants? Will COVID mutate into something far more dangerous than what it is today? And family businesses need to find the right balance between entrenching, so strengthening our balance sheet to endure whatever storm comes our way, to thriving, to how much investment do we make now at this time? Family businesses are known not just for their resilience, but also for having the conservative approach to their balance sheet, so that when opportunities happen, whether they are economic downturns or a pandemic, usually they have the ability to take advantage of that, to gain fire sale prices, for example, or to gain where a competitor stumbles. This has been an advantage of family businesses for many, many decades. And then finally, and a personal passion of mine, the idea of disruption. And here I would say there are two types of disruption. And while I was at HBS, I had the absolute privilege to study under Clay Christensen, to take a class taught by him called BSSE, Building and Sustaining the Successful Enterprise. And his disruption theory has increasingly shifted from the developed world to the emerging world. And in his recent book, I think perhaps the last book before he passed away, called The Prosperity Paradox, he really focused on these new market disruptions. His classic theory of low-cost disruptions would be, okay, many people move up the chain of value. We want a more enhanced product, all the bells and whistles, because we want our customers to pay for the most expensive one. And what they miss is that there are cheaper, lower-cost opportunities that better fit the need of the customer. The customer doesn't want all the bells and whistles. They just want the product. And a good example of this as it impacts the Philippines is remittances. So when you think about remittances, who's been the dominant player for a long time? It's been the banks, it's been Western Union. It's very expensive. And with 10% or so of GDP coming into the Philippines in the form of remittances, the transaction costs of that have a huge impact. Now, more recently, what do you see? You see lower cost alternatives that only focus on getting the cross-border transactions, whether that's B2B payments or C2C customer transactions. So you see a company like TransferWise, for example, that charges a fraction of the price that Western Union. And of course, you see the take on of crypto. So cryptocurrencies, transactions on a decentralized blockchain. These are low-cost disruptions of a business that's been around for more than 100 years. But what's really interesting are the new market disruptions. And what these are, there's the theory of the jobs to be done. So what are the compensating behaviors? What are the ways in which people work around their environment today to satisfy whatever their need is, whether this is getting around excessive bureaucracy, whether this is getting past a lack of available resources, but all the time it is laser focused on a particular goal, a very valuable result to that person. It's the hardest thing to identify these new market disruptions, these jobs that go unfilled. but that are filled ad hoc by people every day. And in fact, those are the opportunities that many people don't even look for because they are content with their current opportunities until someone does find it and they build an entire ecosystem. One example would be Grab or Uber, where they realize that, okay, we have taxi companies, people have their personal vehicles, who would need this rideshare concept? And yet, as a result of companies like Uber and Grab, now who is implicated by that? Car manufacturers are implicated because the utilization of a particular vehicle is much higher. You don't have to own a car. You can basically lease a car on a transaction basis. This is a new market disruption where they saw people needed to go from point A to point B, and they didn't need to own the form of transportation, but they also, it wasn't effective for them to use a predetermined route. There are countless opportunities such as this that in an area like the Philippines, that family businesses are very well positioned to take advantage of. So I'm sorry, I probably talked on too long, but it's an area, as you can probably tell, that I'm very passionate about because ultimately the Philippines has a very bright and a very wonderful future ahead of it. And family businesses will play a pivotal, if not the most pivotal role in achieving that future. So I want to thank everyone again for welcoming me here. I'm very much looking forward to learning from all of you, to working with you and collaborating to achieve a true way forward from COVID. So thank you.
Danke, Hans. Yes, I mean, it's, well, I think that one of the, at least for me, one of the takes that I got from Hans was talking about the unique differences that it's not only like regional differences or nation differences, but even down to individual families, that there are these differences. And then we were faced with challenges like restrictions and uncertainties and disruptions. And I think that this is why it's an opportunity, and for me, my own personal gratefulness that Premier is here and precisely to have that interdisciplinary consultants to help solve and really pave the way to pivot as we have these challenges for 2022. So let me introduce our second consultant. Myleene Lopez is a financial consultant with over 30 years of experience in finance and general management roles across various industries. Myleene was a director and concurrent head of the Visayas Mindanao practice of KPMG International for 4 years. She actually established the office here in Cebu. And it specialized in fraud audit engagements and grants management. She has held VP and CFO positions in several large companies, including a publicly listed company. And she has a master's in management, in business management from the University of the Philippines, while she is also a certified public accountant. Please join me in welcoming Myleene.
Thank you, Jeff. He approached me earlier and said, "Have you prepared for your talk?" I said, "Huh?" Anyway, yes. I'd just like to share why I'm here in the first place. I'm really happy about the fact that, I've waited it out. I've received offers to go back to Manila for a CFO role in a steel company and another in an FMCG company. So I'm like, I just got back to Cebu. I'm a Manilena by birth, by the way, of Ilocano heritage, but a Cebuana by choice. I grew up here, so I consider this my home. So going back to Manila again was actually not one of my choices anymore. So when I got this call from a colleague, a brother in church, a brother in the faith, Jeff, and he told me about Premier, that interested me because for him to be working here, that means something. So And I am not mistaken in having joined them because in the strat planning that we just had with the client over the last weekend, it struck me that it is actually aligned with the biblical truth that businesses can prosper only if they continue to be a blessing. We are blessed to be a blessing. So no amount of financial formula, financial tools, or whatnot can make you prosper if you lose sight of the greater purpose that has been spoken about in the Bible for so many times. In finance, of course, that's a very crucial role because you are not just chronicling the history of the business, but you're also saddled with addressing the daily challenges. No? You have payroll, you have settlement of liabilities, collection of receivables, and all that. That's the current part. Plus your role in charting the future. So as an accountant or as a finance manager, your role is actually transcends time. That's past, present, and future. You make your decisions from the learnings of the past and without losing your vision of the future. So imagine the client's vision stating that social responsibility as well, the social dimension in its vision statement. So that was my affirmation that I made the right choice to be in Premier. And hopefully, with my 30 years, I know that's a lot of you. And that MMBM there might as well be in Master of Management baby making. I have 5 children, but they're all professionals now. They're all professionals now by God's grace. 30 years across different industries. And while Stephanie Go here earlier asked me, and I was stunned. It took me some minutes to answer because she said, "Are you also a 3rd generation or 4th generation business owner?" And I said, "Oh, my parents were both government employees." And then I realized that, like my dad, I also trailblazed because he was one of the 3 musketeers who was sent here to Cebu to open the regional office of the National Bureau of Investigation. That's the FBI for you, NBI here. And since then, actually, after KPMG, most of the engagements that I've had was to open up mostly American companies. You have United Health Group, which started here as Savi Sherpa, Ex Libris, Trax Technologies, one of the biggest logistics company in the US. They're into automated freight payment system. I helped set up the companies. I did the corporate setup services. And then when they said they couldn't find someone else, so they said, "Can you run it as managing director for Asia Pacific?" So I did that for a year because I said, okay, this was my engagement. So I'm realizing, okay, the challenge is there. So now here's COVID and it's another challenge. I think that for as long as we don't lose track of the real purpose, there's no reason why our clients and Premier for that matter, will not succeed. Because it's there, we are blessed to be a blessing. So if we continue to be a blessing, we will continually be blessed. Good morning.
Well, Manila's loss is Premier's gain. We are blessed to be a blessing, and I thank Myleene for being God's blessing to families in business. So our third and last consultant who will be signing this morning is Bernabe Ponla III. And he is a consultant specializing in manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics management. Bernie is currently the VP for Supply Chain and Logistics for International Pharmaceutical Incorporated. He has been the General Manager of Integrated Microelectronics Inc., a part of the Ayala Group of companies. And he has been both the Employee Relations Manager and Operations Manager for Timex Philippines. Bernie obtained his MBA from the Ateneo de Manila University Graduate School of Business, and he is also a licensed electrical engineer. Please join me in welcoming Bernie.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for that very kind introduction. Also, John, thank you so much for Premier and the opportunity that you gave me to do part-time partnership with this very beautiful endeavor. I've been into part-time teaching for the past 16 years, although it was not mentioned by Jeff, but I've been doing part-time teaching in one of the universities here in Cebu, as well as doing some informal part-time assistance with friends in terms of support for the skills that I've been into. And if by my skills and experiences, I could fix a business problem for a family, sustain and even grow it, then in effect it would somehow harmonize the family. Then it gives value to that very famous statement that the family is the basic unit of the society. And through that, for me, it gives me much contentment in putting into action the really basic principle of, in spiritual basic principle of loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And that is the drive that I've been looking into. And when Jeff approached me with John, it's the sign. No? And if that passion gives me to work over the weekend, apart from my core function now, then I have to do it because that gives you energy. Much as, and incidentally, John put my photo there in marathon. It's a passion, and I started serious running at the age of 45, and I attended seminars just to achieve that dream. And in 3 years' time, I made it with God's grace. And this is the kind of analogy that I am into right now with Premier. And looking forward for everybody's contribution in this kind of endeavor. Thank you so much and good noon.
Thank you so much, Bernie. And I'm glad that you mentioned that you've been teaching part-time for the past 16 years. I mean, I myself has actually been also a teacher, and so has our COO, Neil Montes Claros, and so has our co-founder, Teresa, who's been teaching. And I think that this is really integral in being a good consultant because we actually teach and equip our clients on how to be able to solve and manage the problems on their own. I think that that's essential to be a good consultant. So on this juncture, will actually be the ceremonial signing of the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement. So can I ask Bernie and Hans and Myleene to come forward and John as well?
So should we sign it first? Yeah. That's the last thing.
Maybe just the
That's
last one.
the last
Do all
thing.
the other pages.
Yeah, that's
later.
So this memorandum of agreement is actually stating their commitment to. Oh, please. It's just there.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
So this memorandum of agreement is actually their indication that they're committed to our partnership as we grow families in business, and they'll be working with me. Thank you. Just remain seated. we'll ask our COO, Neil Montesclaros, to actually handle a few questions.
Okay, so good noon once again. I had a chance meeting all three of them last night with some initial understanding with family business. I would like to pose this question to all three of you. You can take turns answering it. With your experience, with your credentials, with your capabilities in terms of your profession and whatnot, why dive into family business? Why choose among the many consulting practices that you could actually do with your diverse set of skills? Why family business consulting?
For me personally, I would say I can think of two reasons off the top of my head. The first is family businesses are really underserved. They don't think that they need the help. They tend to focus so much on the business. There are enough challenges just making sure the business passes from year to year and to generation, and yet they don't look at the themselves as owners. They don't look at what steps do we need to take to be resilient, to thrive, to make sure that we are replenishing the family with talented next generation members. And so there is a real need of a third party to come in to basically hold a mirror up to the process and say, this is what we see. We're not, we don't have the same emotional tethers. We don't have the same legacy and identity that you have with the family business that strengthens you. But then I would also say personally, why I'm very passionate about engaging with family businesses is family businesses have just tremendous stories. And I studied way back in undergrad, I studied English literature. And I think of like Victorian novels where the characters are so detailed and they're so fleshed out and they interact with one another. But there are so many complexities with those interactions. And it's a fascinating journey as an advisor to learn about them, to try and figure out what it is that makes the family unique and what drives those interactions, what motivates the individuals and then brings them together, what unifies them. And that for me is in the same way I think that people like to perhaps binge watch TV shows and go into all of the different motivations and Easter eggs of the characters. That's very much what family business advising is about. If you go straight to the problems and the solutions, it won't be an enduring solution. So anyway, those are two areas where I'm in particularly drawn.
Yeah. So serving a family business is like watching Netflix in limited series, right? With all the characters. Okay. Myleene?
For two reasons. Family business consulting is unique in that there's more satisfaction in being a part of it. Number one, if you talk about being a consultant to big corporations already, which I have done in my KPMG stint, the difference here is that you are more in touch with people rather than just the concept of the organization. And number two, bigger corporations have no problems with access to capital. Family companies or businesses, on the other hand, face bigger challenges. And I think that that's where we can better help. In my case, as a financial consultant, because my training was in capital raising, whether through debt or equity. I've been exposed to mergers and acquisitions. So at the family business level, while they're more saddled with operational issues, I think that experience coming from a firm like KPMG will serve them well, because it will change also there will be a paradigm shift in the way they think, that instead of just focusing here, there's actually a bigger world out there and a bigger access also to capital. So I think that the impact of the effort and the contribution will be more satisfying in a personal sense for me now that I actually was pulled out of semi-retirement. And also, if you notice, in the Philippines, the bigger companies actually started as family companies, right? Let's not go far. IPI was started by Sir Pio Castillo. The Yap family, where I worked with for 10 years. And the list of corporations that you showed yesterday, those are all family corporations. And they did start big. They started small. So hopefully, with Premier Family Business Consulting, the clients that we're helping right now can also get to where they want to be.
Thank you, Myleene. Bernie, candidate number 2.
Really the biggest motivation that I've been into this endeavor is the one I said earlier, when if by chance through my experience and skills I could help fix and sustain and improve a particular business family, then in that effect it really harmonizes that family. That for me is so much already, because in my experiences I've been working in a Western company for close to 3 decades, and then now I am into a family organization business, and I see the growth and I see the relationship with myself and the family members. It's just so much for me. It's a wonderful feeling to really experience when you are working in a business and a family doing well, and the relationship is so clear that the harmony and everything, and that gives me that kind of thinking that if I could replicate that kind of experience that I'm having now, then it would be a wonderful situation to the country. That's basically the reason being.
Okay, thank you. One more question. In view of what we're raised with one of our clients who is a family business, but do you believe that family business or family businesses have a critical role or function for national recovery? And if you do believe so, why would they have that critical role? Why would a family business have a critical role for national recovery? And if so, what would that be? Why are they important for any economy, for that matter? Anybody could share an insight?
Told again. I mean, family businesses in the Philippines are one of the most robust deployments of capital. They're also in touch with people across the Philippines. They have to be. Family businesses tend to be much more oriented to not the shareholder, but the stakeholder. Who are our stakeholders? It's our employees, it's our customers, it's our community in which we operate in. And they have to be aware of when all of those stakeholders are impacted. And certainly COVID has impacted all those stakeholders. And so that awareness and that drive to say we will adapt in whatever way we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our stakeholders and we're continuing to grow is exactly why I think family businesses will be even more nimble than almost any other actors in the Philippines in driving to the path forward. That would be my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Myleene?
Well, the family is the basic unit of society. If it breaks down, society breaks down. Now, if they succeed in their endeavors in business, can you imagine that being multiplied on a national scale? Even if every Filipino in say a barangay would have his own business, they will be self-sufficient. So you're talking about an economy that, let the government borrow money elsewhere, but the people at the grassroots are they're independent. They can provide for themselves. That's a whole lot of effect on the national economy. They don't have to be saddled anymore with issues of hunger and whatnot, because at the very basic unit of society. Each family is surviving on its own and is capable of meeting its own needs without having to rely on the national government.
Correct. A single family generally creates a living for its own family, but when you're talking of a family business creates a living for multiple families, especially when you talk about the stakeholders such as the employees. Yep. Bernie?
Yeah, well, for me, it's pretty obvious that the driver of economy, specifically in the Philippines, is family business. No, and we discussed that last night. That I think 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 of the biggest companies in the country are family-owned business. So if you stay focused on the sustainability and the growth of those principles, then obviously the effect of the economy would be just a follow through.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff, for your sharing. So I've been asked also to wrap up this morning or this noon time. And as our consultants have mentioned, family businesses will create a lot of difference in terms of national recovery. So the question is, how do we ignite family businesses? And all of us know systems are important, structure is important, but without the right people, you're going nowhere. Systems and structures do not automatically move by themselves. Any venture towards change is an investment of people. If you want change, invest on the right people. It could be organic people, meaning people who will actually be employed in your family business. From the point of view of Premier, we realize that the human capital is one of the greatest capital any business should put more stakes on. Not only from the point of view of employment, but also in terms of expertise. And that is why if you're talking of national recovery, it's about getting the right people to help us out. We cannot talk of any kind of recovery from the point of view of a family business or even at the national scale if we don't have the right people supporting each other for a common direction. So my final thoughts for this activity is that Premier is paving the way for national recovery because from day one, we believe that getting the right people in the bus will make a lot of difference. And we welcome the three of you to the Premier bus. Thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome Hans, Bernie, and Myleene. So this has been Jeff, and we are signing off. Thank you very much and have a good day.